Happy Thursday. It is Mary here from Mary's Heirloom Seeds, and welcome to my live chat. I try to go live here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Central Time. So if you're just joining me for the first time, welcome. If you're joining me again, welcome back. So tonight, our topic is, hang on just a second, need to be able to see. Awesome. Okay. So while I'm chatting here with you tonight, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. If I miss your comment or your question, just have patience with me and I'll scroll back up as I have a chance. Now, hey, Homestead Aquarius, thanks for joining us. If you are watching a replay later on, you can always send an email if you want a more rapid response to your question. My email is mary@marysheirloomseeds.com. And I am Mary. So in the description section of this video, I will refer to that in every single video, and it might get annoying, but for those of you that are new, you may not realize. In the description section of this video, you will find a link to my comprehensive planting guide. In that comprehensive planting guide, you will find so much more information. Hey, Christine, thanks for joining us. I recently updated. Hey, who's there? Thanks for joining us. So I recently updated our comprehensive planting guide, and I sent it out on in an email a couple of weeks ago. And you mentioned my tumblers, and I'll mention that in just a second. So tonight, I just wanted to share, or at least ask you, or chat with you. What are your questions? What are your concerns? What are your struggles maybe with seed starting? So one of the common comments or emails I get from customers is that starting from seed can be intimidating. And I try to make that as simple as possible, the process, make it easier. And I have a couple things on my table here that I wanted to share with you. Now, before we get started, you mentioned my tumblers. I'm going to kind of debut them tonight. They're not available on our website yet, but I had these specially made for myself to see if I wanted to offer them to our customers because everybody's asking for different stuff. If you missed the option to pre-order your t-shirts, not everybody wants a Mary's Heirloom t-shirt, totally fine. I love these tumblers. I had the same company, they are Rusty Water Revival LLC here locally. And I had her make me some tumblers. So before we get into the questions, I'm going to show them to you. Since you're watching this live, you get to see these first. I have not shared these with our business pages at all. So she made this for me. It says Mary's Heirloom Seeds there. That's the same thing we have on our sticker and some of our shirts. And that's really fun. Now, one of my favorite ones, and then we'll get to the seed starting, I promise. Same one, and it says, "The garden is calling and I must go." Oh, awesome. Who's there says you saw them on my Instagram. I'm going to share them on our Facebook page in a little bit. I did share these on my personal page because, of course, everybody wants them. And then there's just one with the logo. These are 20-ounce tumblers. And again, they are made locally just for us, so I'm super excited. All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of our video tonight. Let's see. You're just beginning to start a compost pile in 2 boxes. You bought a drilled you bought them and then drilled holes in them. Awesome. So I am making leaf mold. I have a previous live chat, I think, on our Facebook page, though, not on YouTube, about making leaf mold. So my next video will not be a live video. I'm finally, after about a year of not actually posting tutorials on our YouTube channel, I've been going live for the last year and it's been super fun, but I need to get back to what I really like, and that's sharing the tutorials. Hey, Inga, thanks for joining us. So let's talk about seed starting. Like I said, you've got lots of information in my comprehensive planting guide. If you are signed up for my emails, you recently received an email for a free printable seed starting worksheet. That was super awesome. My friend Lisa at the Self-Sufficient Homestead, the Self-Sufficient Homeacre made that for me. She is the one where she wrote 2 books that we've given away to some of our customers. She's awesome. So she made this free printable for me. She just added my logo to it. I asked her to kind of help me out because I'm not as tech savvy to make those types of things. If it has to do with dirt and planting something, I'm your girl. But if it comes to creating some kind of document like that, it's a little more generic when I do it. So she made it a little more fancy. Hey, Jules1280, thanks for joining us. So seed starting doesn't have to be difficult. You don't have to have anything fancy. Who's there says, I'm looking at it now. Awesome. Thank you. You can print that. You can save it. You can share it. Like I said, it's free. It's not something I'm charging for. You just get to use it if you want. Some people said, well, that's great, but I'm not that organized. Well, that is a common thing. If you don't know what you planted or you're not sure how long it takes, that worksheet might help you because there's a slot for what you planted, how many days to transplant, and then how many days after you transplant to maturity. And then you can write some notes on it. Hey, Cindy, oh, you're not late. We're fine here. You're hanging out. We're talking about seed starting tonight. So that worksheet can be easy. It's really simple. Like I mentioned, I was live at the Naked Gardeners on Saturday, and I mentioned how I like to keep things simple. Seed starting, growing food, making compost, making leaf mold. Hey, Shirley, it doesn't have to be difficult. I do like to keep things simple. So there's a couple ways you can start seeds if you're doing it indoors. I've got a couple videos on starting seeds indoors, but we're kind of going to go a little bit of that now. Christine says we have the hardest time growing cauliflower and broccoli. It grows, but it doesn't produce. Oftentimes that happens because it is a cool weather crop. Unfortunately, sometimes it just goes from hot to cold and freezing right away, and you don't have that long, cooler weather. So I'm learning about growing in East Texas. It's a challenge. Learning a new growing region. We had a freeze in October, and then we didn't have another freeze until mid-November. And now it was 80 degrees here yesterday. So some stuff's growing in the garden. Some stuff got completely just frozen, didn't make it, and I didn't put a cloth over it when I should have. So it's a learning experience. But the broccoli and the cauliflower in particular, if they're not heading, is either a nutrient deficiency, but most likely it's a temperature issue. So I can discuss that in a later of a video as well. Who's there says, yeah, I'm in hot San Joaquin Valley and it's not easy to grow broccoli for you. See, again, that's one of those things. I do really well with root crops here. Even in the warmer temperatures, we have radish, we've got turnips, we've got beets. So that really does really well here. The broccoli was okay. The collards were fantastic. I still have a whole bed full of collards growing, which is awesome. Cindy says we'll have a high of 19 here next week for a couple days west of Boise. So yeah, if you have a high tunnel, if you have a greenhouse, if you have just row covers that keep some of the warmth in, that is a way of extending your growing season. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple different ways to grow indoors if you want to start from, maybe you want to start something early. It's December, so maybe you're not growing seeds right now. Not everybody is. I'm growing in a tent for some microgreens that I shared a couple weeks ago, but I'm not going to start my seeds until January. Now you might be thinking, Mary, that is insanely early to start your seeds, but I'll explain why. Some super hots take 30 days to germinate. It takes some patience, right? 30 days. You think, well, a jalapeno pepper seed usually takes about 7 to 10 days to germinate, and sometimes even sooner than that. But my super hots, let's see, Homestead Aquarius says, I'm in Alabama. It was 74 here today. It's a little warm for us. Yep, it was 76 to 80 degrees today, so it is a little warm. It's a little cooler now because it's later in the evening time, but it was definitely. Cindy says I'm starting my peppers in January. So exactly. So we're really not talking about seed starting too early, because if you're just starting your seeds in about 2 weeks from now, now's the time to start preparing and planning for that. So I'll give you a couple ways that I start seeds. The first one is coconut coir pellets. This is one of many ways to do it. I've got an amazing video where I show you how fast these little things pop up. This little disc will grow like 3 to 5 times its size, and that will allow for a nice fluffy mixture to plant your seeds in. Now let me answer this question from Inga. Regarding zones, if hardiness zone is 8 and I'm in 9, will I still be able to grow a plant in 9 like certain herbs, trying angelica? Yes. So I kind of ignore the zones because zones are, in my experience, the specific zones are more like for a tree, you need frost hours, or what is it, cold hours, what they call it. I'm newer to fruit trees. We've got a couple here that are doing really well. But just because it doesn't say, oh, you have to do it in this one, you can always break the rules and plant them as you would. Now, maybe it won't be a perennial in your area, or maybe it will only be an annual in your area, but you can still grow it. Absolutely. I would never say you definitely can't. And Cindy says the coconut coir pellets are better than Jiffy. So the difference between the coconut coir and the Jiffy is these are coconut pith, and the Jiffy are usually a peat moss. I don't use peat moss. It is a little more acidic, and I find that my seeds germinate so much better using the coconut coir over the peat moss. So I love them. I really do love them. And speaking of coconut coir, we also have these giant bricks. This is what is considered a bulk brick. This again will go about 9 times its size. If you add water, it gets big. So this will fill up about a half of a 5-gallon bucket when you add water to it. It's approximate, it's not for sure. This is literally just a byproduct of the coconut industry. It's the outer husk of the coconut, and it's just ground into a powder, and then it's compressed. So this has the water removed from it, and it's compressed into a brick. And then when you add water, it gets bigger. And again, I have a whole video on that, so I'm not going to recreate the wheel on that one. But if you scroll through my YouTube channels, or you just search coconut coir Mary's Heirloom Seeds, you will find it. Again, in our comprehensive planting guide, I do have these videos on how to add water to your coconut and then add it to your garden. And now what you would use those coconut coir brick for, you can use these handy dandy 6-cell germination trays. They're super easy, and I like these because they're a little more flexible. So when you're ready to remove your seedling, you can just pinch the bottom of it and push it out, and the seedling comes right out. Some of the harder, like the thicker, the tougher germination trays, they don't allow you to push from the bottom. And the problem with that is if you pull your seedling out from the top, you might be really damaging that seedling. So I really like these. But again, these are just simply options for seed starting. You really don't need to have all this equipment. It's not really a lot of equipment, but you can find this stuff at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. But I also have a couple videos on how to use recycled options. So as soon as I'm done, I will share links in the description section of this video. I believe it was 4 years ago, I did a January video on seed starting, and I shared all of the different recycled options you can use. Sour cream containers, really the sky's the limit on being creative on doing it. You can take milk cartons, whether it's the carton or whether it's the plastic container, plastic bottles. You can pretty much use anything. Those are food grade. So if you ate food out of it and it was plastic, you can still use it to grow your seeds. I wouldn't use them over and over because that plastic can degrade. And again, you don't have to use plastic. You can definitely start your seeds directly in the ground, but these are ways that I use to grow indoors to start my seeds. So while I'm here with you, while you guys got a couple minutes, what are your questions? Do you have any specific questions on seed starting? Inga already asked. Who's there says, I bought the elderberry and need to make some syrup soon. I am making some elderberry syrup this weekend. with the changes in the weather, our allergies have kind of flared up a little bit. It does kind of mess up my sinuses when it goes from 40 degrees to 80 degrees in a couple days. So if you do have issues like that, plus, if you're going to be around a couple people and you want to kind of boost your immune system, elderberry is a great option. I'll be making fire cider this weekend as well. I don't have a recipe for that, but there's a lot of recipes online. While I was live, no, you bought 3 pounds, but you should buy some more. So while I was live at the Naked Gardeners, if you missed that, it was a lot of fun. It was an hour long, and I was live on someone else's channel on Saturday. I don't usually do that. And we talked about a couple things. Specifically, one was companion planting, and I got a question afterwards in an email, and they said, well, how do I do have a recipe. Who's there says, I have a recipe on my website for making elderberry syrup, but I don't have a video. I do have a video on making the calendula infused oil or cream that I use. I've got a video on making the lavender oil. It's super easy. That's probably the easiest thing I make. But I do have a couple of those videos. I don't have one on making elderberry syrup, just a print article at marysheirloomseeds.com. If you do want to see my recipe, you can go to marysheirloomseeds.com, and in the top left section, there's a little search bar. You can type in elderberry syrup and it'll pop up with my recipe right there. So while I was live, I got a question. Hey, Ruth in Georgia Backyard Garden, welcome. So one of the questions I received in an email was, when you start your seeds for companion planting, how do you work it? Do you plant your main crop, say for example, a tomato, and then do you plant your companions around it? Do you plant it outside of it? Do you give it its own section? So I wanted to briefly answer that question. I did answer it in an email, but I wanted to share it since we are talking about seed starting. So I plan out my gardens typically in my square foot gardens. I've got 4 foot by 8 foot beds out there. I've got smaller beds over here, and I've got in ground over there. So there's a couple different gardens that we're talking about here, but specifically for the raised beds, I'll just use that as an example. So I plan out using graph paper, and I use my 4 foot by 8 foot. And so, for example, if we're talking about tomatoes, I'm definitely going to use borage as a companion plant. I'm going to use marigolds as a companion plant, and I'm definitely going to use basil, my favorite, one of my all-time favorite herbs. So when I do that, I'm going to keep in mind that tomato, it might take up more room than a single square. So I'm going to leave that tomato a little inside that square, and then I'm going to interplant my companion plants around that plant. So I'm not necessarily going to designate a giant area just for one companion. When I start those seeds, I'm going to plant them all over the place. So yes, it might look a little chaotic in the beginning, but it means that I'm not going, okay, well, I have this whole square that is going to be just one plant. I'm going to utilize the space a little better. I am going to give it a little more space, for example, if it's a tomato, but not necessarily a pepper. I put 1 pepper per square. So if I'm seed starting, I'm using the square foot garden method, specifically in my 4 foot by 8 foot. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure 1 per square on the peppers, just as an example. Let's see. Cindy said, I love that you mentioned the Naked Gardeners using strong stalk corn, not sweet corn, so the companion plants can grow up the strong stalk. Absolutely. Let's see. Homestead and Crazy. If I missed your comments, please give me some patience. I will make sure that I answer your questions. Homestead and Crazy says, I'm a first-time visitor on a live. Love starting my own seeds. Me too. So one of the emails, or one of the articles that I have on my website, again, I sent it in an email today. If you haven't signed up, in the description section of this video, you'll find my comprehensive planting guide and the sign up link for my emails. If you want to receive weekly emails, it's a great way to get it without having to maybe miss it. Maybe you missed a video, maybe you're not on other social media and you might have missed it. I don't sell your information. It's only used for emails. So yes, the companion planting, that was another one, was using the Three Sisters Garden method. And if you had struggled with that and maybe your corn fell over, using a good, strong corn stalk is fantastic. Well, welcome. We've got some new people. You're first on our live chat tonight. I appreciate it. I do try to keep my lives typically a little short and sweet. And again, we're talking about not companion planting. I was just talking about that. We are talking about seed starting today, and part of that is companion planting. So in our new seed combo pack is the Three Sisters Garden. So that was part of the discussion last week on Saturday with the Naked Gardeners. So in that is rainbow Indian corn. That is a good, strong stalk. So we really want to give you a good, strong stalk. And then timing. So again, we're talking about seed starting. So if you're growing something like the Three Sisters Garden, timing of your seed starting is so important. Think about it. Your corn is going to take 110 to 120 days to maturity. So if your beans are only going to take 70 to 80 or 90 days, you're definitely going to want to make sure you plant your corn first. Plant your corn. Give it 2 weeks. Give it 4 weeks. And that will give you a good, strong base for your beans. And then another one is the pumpkins or squash. So a pumpkin is a winter squash. So you can use any vining squash really, or any kind of squash. Honestly, I've had success using a bushy summer squash. It doesn't specifically have to be one or the other. Usually, traditionally, it is a vining winter squash because it covers a broader area. Hey, Christian, thanks for joining us. He says you concur. Awesome. Welcome. So in our Three Sisters combo is the rattlesnake pole bean. So again, if you're talking about a 70 to 90 days, you want to give it a little staggered time. Make sure you get a nice corn stalk before you plant your beans. And then because the beans and the winter squash are going to be about the same time, you can probably plant them at the same time and everything will kind of grow up together. But again, we're talking about seed starting. So one, it takes patience. Like I mentioned earlier, in January, I start my hot pepper seeds because I want to give them a good heads up. And the seeds take quite a while to germinate. They're not like your typical beans or squash that take 3 days to germinate. It can be up to 30 days. So again, you want to have patience. A couple factors are warmth. You want to make sure your soil is warm. So if you're planting outside, you want to make sure it's after your frost date and you want to make sure the soil is warm. If you're planting inside and it's a cold room, you want to make sure that you have some source of heat. So that's a really important one. Yes, Christian, January is right around the corner. So that's definitely something that we're considering now. And that's kind of why I wanted to share just a tidbit about seed starting. As I mentioned earlier, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up. And then again, if you want this information in an email, the link to my email sign up sheet is right there. So if you have any questions, as I mentioned, you can always send me an email. My email is mary@marysheirloomseeds.com. I did mention earlier that I just had these made for me, so I'm going to share it again because I'm super excited. So this is my new tumbler that we will have on our website pretty soon. Who's there says, when planting indoors, what do you do about the bugs? So when you are growing indoors, you typically don't have issues with bugs. If you have gnats, you can use some people use a spray, but I don't. I don't have issues with bugs actually because I'm growing indoors. If I was growing outside, it would depend on what I'm growing actually. I've seen people that have brought their pepper plants in to overwinter inside and they've had aphids. you're going to want to make sure that you keep an eye on those early on. Some people just use a blast, a spray of water to get those aphids. Some people use neem oil and soapy water. I have, like I said, I have not had bug issues when I grow indoors because I use a grow tent. I shared that 2 weeks ago during my live, I think. So that would be a good one. Christian says you sprout pepper seeds with a heat mat and grow light, or you direct sow. I plant my pepper seeds indoors on a heat mat under lights because it takes quite a while to grow from seed, and I want to get a good head start. So I do have a video, I believe, from last year. Facebook and YouTube were a little wonky for me for a little while. So I was going live on Facebook and then I stopped and started back to going live on YouTube. So I will have to go back and find if I have the video on my Facebook or if I have it on my YouTube. I did an entire video about the different types of lights you can use. I explained all of the different ins and outs of the types of bulbs. All of this is not required. You don't have to do any of this fancy stuff. You can literally, you need soil, seeds, water, light. So like I said, I do try to keep it simple, but there are some things that I prefer to grow inside. So I get a head start. Growing from our last homestead to our current homestead, we lost about 30 days worth of frost-free days. So I did, for the first full year, I did want to get a head start just so I knew kind of what I was doing and what would work and what wouldn't. Inga said, I'm a pretty lazy gardener and doing square foot gardening, and when I can, I direct sow and then transplant out. From the garden, you do it directly. That's totally fine. And Inga, you live in a great place to grow. You live in Florida where you can almost grow, actually, you can definitely grow year round. When we started Mary's Heirloom Seeds, I was in Hollywood, Florida, which is further south from you, and that is zone 10. So it gets really, really hot and it doesn't get really cold. So there's some things you can't really grow, but there's a lot of things you can grow almost year round. So it really depends on how you like it. I'm kind of a lazy gardener when it comes to that too. I kind of call it like chaos gardening because, like I said, when I plant in a bed, I don't do like nice, neat rows. I plant my main crop and then I plant a couple of companion plants around it. So there's nothing neat and tidy about my garden. It's chaos and I like it. I know where everything's at, but some people might look at it and go, oh my gosh, that's a lot growing in one bed, but whatever, I enjoy it. Cindy says I put apple cider vinegar in an open jar in my worm bin to catch bugs. Oh, see, that's a great idea. You put apple cider vinegar and that will help grab some of those bugs. That way you don't have any indoor bugs. Awesome. Thank you very much for the tip. I appreciate it. Inga says lettuce and mustard are everywhere, as is the amaranth. Oh, I love it. Amaranth is free food. My friend was over checking out the garden and she's working in my seed shop today. And she looks out and she's like, what is that? There's something growing. I had sunflowers popping up from the sunflower seeds I dropped when I was harvesting them. I had a couple of radish from when I was harvesting radish pods, and I had some radish there on the ground, and I'm going to harvest those this week, and it's free food. I'm going to enjoy it. Alrighty, everybody, so that's it for me. I am Mary at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. If you have questions after this video, you can send an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com. If you want more information, you can sign up for my email list. As soon as I'm done with this live chat, I'm going to head on in to my other office and I'm going to send out that email. So if you've signed up during the live chat, I'll go ahead and make sure I do it. And that is it for me. If you've got any questions and you want maybe suggestions for our next live chat, you can include that in an email as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm Mary at Mary's Heirloom Seeds, signing off, and happy planting.